Hey, leaders, welcome back to the Happy Leader podcast. I am your host, Coach T. Payne, Tamika Payne, and I am so glad that you decided to join us this week. Today, we're diving into a mindset that's transformed how I lead inside complex systems like bureaucratic systems that you find in, say, the federal government or the military. It's a mindset that I call the solutionist mindset approach. In our episode this week, we'll talk about what a solutionist is, how that differs from a traditional problem solver, why it matters a lot inside of bureaucratic systems, and some practical ways that you can navigate no matter your rank or your role and lead forward with purpose and impact. It is possible, and I want to help you through it in this episode. Let me tell you a little bit of why this all matters. In bureaucratic organization, the challenges that come are rarely packaged with clear ownership or easy fixes or rapid and swift timelines, right? Problems often surface with a lot of layers that are built slowly, methodically, and they're baked in process, policy, tradition, and don't forget a lot of risk aversion around the issue. So, in those types of environments, lots of people become problem solvers. And there's value in having problem solvers in a complacency based organization. But there is a difference between a person who solves problems and a person who brings solutions. There's someone who acknowledges the problem but focuses primarily on assessing and implementing the best solutions. Those are what we're calling solutionists. And those people have what I've been calling this solutionist mindset. So there's a podcaster out there named Matt Hogan, and a few years ago, he talked about this topic in his own words. And he said something that I think is important to note. He said that the difference can be the key to getting things done when structure, process, and inertia feel like obstacles. So the difference between a problem solver and a solutionist can be the exact key to getting things done when inertia feels like the challenge, like you cannot press through. So, let me start with some definitions for us so we can ground this conversation in some common framework. So, I like the Cambridge Dictionary, and it defines a solutionist as someone concerned with finding solutions, someone focused on the outcomes rather than dwelling on the problem itself. Now, this definition is helpful and it aligns with how some others have described the term. It is not just a synonym for a problem solver, these are different. But a solutionist is someone whose mindset is very future oriented. A problem solver may spend an extensive time analyzing a problem. They may look at it from all angles and explore this problem and know it intimately, while a solutionist acknowledges the problem and then shifts the focus on assessing the best solutions for the desired outcome. You should think of the solution as a bit more intentional on the outcome, while the problem solver is a bit more focused on the actual problem. In short, to summarize, let me just say it this way: a problem solver focuses a lot on the problem. It's in the name, problem solver. A solutionist focuses a lot on what a good solution looks like and how to craft it. And I would say, oftentimes, who it takes to get there to that good solution. So there are some key elements of this solutionist mindset that I'm talking about, and I'm going to outline a little bit for us so that you can add it to your own frameworks when you're leading others. So some of these key elements include a well-defined solution of mindset includes several behaviors that are especially powerful in bureaucratic and compliance-based systems. The first one is adaptive thinking. Solutionists are comfortable with change and uncertainty. They see challenges as opportunities to experiment and to iterate. They don't see it just as obstacles to avoid and to prevent. So the other thing that this mindset breeds and needs is action orientation. So there are some leaders who will talk about the problems. And again, there is a place for this process and those people. But a solutionist is very much focused on action. They want to do and not say so much. They are people of movement. They implement, they experiment, they pivot, they learn, they try again, they fail forward, and they're comfortable in all of these. The third trait is inclusive engagement. And this is a good one. Solutionists understand that complex systems require perspectives from many voices, especially the people that are the closest to the work, who are going to be the people that are closest to the impact of finding the solution. The fourth one is resilience and rest. There's a blog by Futerra, and I'll link it in the comments here. But it talks about how solutionists need to build stamina, not just grit. So a solutionist is not going to just grin and bear it and push through and persevere at all costs. Solutionists are those who know when to rest, they know when to recharge, they know how to return to the work, and they know that if they do rest and recharge, they'll come back to the work refreshed, and then they can have a sustained impact, understanding that solutions and solution development is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so they'll be able to persevere. The fifth one is joy in the process, right? Hence, Happy Leader podcast. So, interestingly, one key trait that solutionists often have is that they have joy in solving. They get purpose from progress, even if the problems persist. So they're not so focused on solving a problem as they are in the process of gaining solutions and desired outcomes and purpose. So let me share a personal story of how this played out in my own organizational leadership experience. So, having had the opportunity to lead a few hundred people, a little over 1,000 by now, in this one particular time, I was tasked with commander's duty over a unit to get essential information to a very, very busy group of people. These people's schedules were packed tight. They had constantly competing priorities, limited time for meetings. So the traditional setup of everyone come to this one place at a set time to exchange information with me or those in leadership on my team was not going to work. So instead of waiting for all the people to come see me and to do that whole thing, I just flipped the paradigm. So I and my leadership team, we took our leadership messages each month to the team. And it's something that we started to call a walking commander's call. And so what we did was we formulated our talking points, we scripted narratives of what we're going to say this month and who needs to speak what parts. And then we took to the work centers. So as the leadership team, we went out to where the people actually worked and where they were in their own element, and we shifted that responsibility of communication exchange so that we shouldered more of it in these instances than they did. And over 3 years, this whole thing evolved, and it wasn't just a cool communication method, it became really an expression of a solutionist mindset. Listen, so we reframed the problem, which was that people were way too busy to stop what they're doing to come to yet another meeting. We redesigned the solutions, which was bring the leadership to the people. And then we iterated it over time. We formalized it and we improved it. So while I did not measure with formal metrics like I like to do, I can tell you what shifted. What shifted was a communication flow throughout the organization. It increased, it was really fluid. The accessibility to those of us in leadership team and for us to have access to our people who were doing the work. It built relational trust in our organization, which is something I talked about in a previous recording of this podcast. And we just saw that it wasn't problem solving as we know it. It was intentionally choosing how to solve a problem with the awareness of the systems that we had and the knowledge and intentionality of the people involved. So, with that said, solutionists do not always have it easy. In fact, I say rarely does a solutionist, especially in a bureaucratic organization, have it easy. I think it's pretty difficult. And I can share what I think and what I've read are some common challenges. And I'll also add ways that you can overcome them so that you don't find yourself frustrated in the bureaucratic organization when you are one of the solutionists. First is going to be resistance to the change. Bureaucracies are built to manage consistency. They're built to reward consistency. They are not built to house innovation or to encourage innovation. So take that as a fact. One way you overcome it, though, is by framing your solution in terms of, say, mission impact and showing your small wins quickly and garnering the momentum in small wins to overcome the resistance. Try to tie the changes in your policy to more compliance, right? Speak the language of the people you're working for. You can also be misunderstood as skipping the process. I've been accused of this. People sometimes think that when you're a solutionist, you're just bypassing structures and you just want to throw away the whole system and do your own thing. That's not really true. But one way you can overcome this is by align your existing frameworks to align your intentions to the existing frameworks. Map out how the solutions you're developing fit into the policy before you propose the change. Another thing you can do is involve the gatekeepers extremely early. Get their buy-in, and that will help you. The third one I'll tell you that you face is risk aversion and the approval bottlenecks. Solutionists are going to want to move quickly. They want to get the thing done right now. But the systems that we're in, they want checks and balances. They want to have repeatability and sustainability. You can overcome this by providing clear risk assessments, proposing piloted versions of your idea, offering some measurable checkpoints that allow the gatekeepers to turn and pivot where you're going. And all of this requires a lot of patience, which is not something solutionists are going to want to hear, discipline, and ability to adapt and operate inside of the system that you're trying to improve and not step outside of it to try to improve it from the outside. So, here's some practical tips for leaders if you want to take this and apply it. So, if you want to develop your own solutionist capability in these bureaucratic settings, then start with the clarity of the outcome, not clarity of the problem. One way you can do that is by questioning. Ask what outcome would make this worthwhile? What outcome is going to make this effort worthwhile? Engage multiple perspectives before you finalize a plan. And in those multiple perspectives, include people who are not usually in your range of advisors. Get some other folks into the mix just to get their opinion and their views. You can also prototype a small version of your solution. I mentioned this earlier that if you beta test, that's a phrase I use often. Let me beta test this here, and then we'll see the risk and we'll work the kinks out, and then we can grow this into a larger scale. You can also communicate progress visually, maps, charts, graphs, and do that regularly. And the last thing you can do is learn when to adapt and learn when to push through if you want to create the solutionist mindset in your organization. A solutionist mindset, it doesn't ignore problems, as some would say. It elevates solutions while respecting the system that we lead in. Inside bureaucracy, being a solutionist means choosing creative agency within the structure. It means focusing on impact over inertia, which is very hard for me personally, and leading forward even when the path isn't exactly clear. So let's agree that when you have solutionists on your team and when you have a solutionist mindset, it's going to look different than the problem solver mindset. And that there is room for both in an organization. But I challenge us as leaders to take the time to develop this solutionist mindset. If this conversation has helped you in any way, then please share, subscribe, like, post, use it in your own leadership conversations, and join me again next week for another feeding of happy leading.